Hi, Ciera. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Lauren. Happy to be back.
All right, so remind the audience who you are and what you do.
So, I am a career Contessa career coach, and I also own my own career consulting business, Dr. C. Graham Consulting. My specialty is helping millennials and Gen Zers assess their skills, define their strategy, and engage in storytelling to secure and succeed in the job of their dreams. And just a little bit more about me, because I often get the question, how did I get into career coaching? So I am the first in my family to go to college. I come from a working class background. So education and career advancement were highly valued in my family, as is the case for most first generation college students. I studied sociology in college, and I was always fascinated with topics around social inequality and education and work. So I naturally took an interest in looking at the experiences of women and ethnic minorities in the workplace. And of course, as I began to excel in my own career, I had a lot of mentors and career coaches along the way. But I realized a couple things. There were not many Black women career coaches. And secondly, not many career coaches were focused on helping millennials and Gen Zers in applying for and navigating their first job, their first management position, and navigating advancement opportunities. So I think back to when I was a young, impressionable college grad, and I was still very anxious about job searching and my career trajectory. So I've really received a lot of satisfaction in helping clients transition into their first careers and just navigate all the messiness that comes from entry to mid-level careers and grow into the next level.
Yeah, I always say, especially the entry level and kind of, maybe not the first job, but the first like two, three, job one, two, and three. It's like you don't know what you don't know. And so there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety, and you think you want to go this route. So you throw all your eggs in that basket, then you get it and you realize it's not right. And it's like, I'd love to say that there's a secret to success and getting this right, but truly it's like every person I know, every successful person I know goes through that kind of initial growing pains of that career trajectory and advancement and figuring out. It would be super helpful if you especially left college or as you got into those first careers, if you had a career coach leading you and someone to help you be thoughtful about it, but that's not always the case. Okay, so let's talk about something that we hear a lot, which is millennials versus Gen Z. And I think actually what would be helpful is tell us first what defines a millennial manager and what unique characteristics define millennials versus Gen Z. We'll start off with kind of a general understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So, contrary to popular belief, millennials are not young anymore. They are between the ages of 24 and 39 years old. And data shows that about 62% of millennials say that they have at least one direct report. So, it's important to remember that they're not just employees of a company or an organization, they're also people managers. And millennials and Gen Zers have a lot in common. So millennials really value collaboration and teamwork, and really more of a servant leadership style as opposed to a command and control leadership style. They value self-development, so they're always invested in kind of reskilling or upskilling. How can they add value to a company? And they also value work-life balance. And unlike previous generations, millennials generally feel that making money is secondary to the larger goal of purpose and vision. So they want their professional lives to really make a difference in the world.
Well, I sign me up. I mean, I'm a millennial and I relate to a lot of that. I also saw this really good LinkedIn post the other day where the woman was kind of doing a stiff off of the I'm a millennial manager. Of course and it was like all these phrases and it was like, of course I value work-life balance. Of course
Yes.
I tell my direct report to work from home if they have a doctor's appointment too. Why should I have to sit in the commute? And I just related to a lot of it with my own style as a quote millennial manager. Tell us a little bit about Gen Z. I love that you say we actually have a lot more in common because if you look at the internet, they would make you think that we are totally different species who care about totally different things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yes, like I mentioned, they do have a lot in common. And I would argue that because of that, I think well positioned and have the exact skill set that a lot of Gen Zers are looking for in a manager. So, in terms of some attributes of Gen Zers, they're between the ages of 12 and 27. I think it's important to remember that, they were raised in kind of the information technology age. So, they were raised on internet, smartphones, and social media. So, they have really experienced a world where they need to be constantly connected. They value skills that focus on people rather than the business. So they're really going to appreciate managers who foster a culture of transparency, managers who openly talk about their values and how their values drive business decisions. They want open communication. And of course, they want healthy and productive work cultures. And they tend to prefer these attributes over an employer who values the bottom line. I also think it's important to remember that this is a generation that has experienced a lot of stress. And because of this, they're open to talking about mental health and the role that work plays in their own mental health. They have experienced COVID-19, as we all have, the prolonged isolation as a result of COVID-19, record inflation, and high student debt with college. So, again, it's important to remember that millennials and Gen Zers have more in common than most people think. They desire people first cultures. And again, I think millennials do make some of the best managers for Gen Z employees.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. One thing I do find interesting in all of this though is like this emphasis of not being focused on the bottom line, which you could also say there's research that shows like when you focus on, providing stability and security and trust in the workplace, you create a more productive workforce, which is going to create a better bottom line, right? So you could say like they're not focused on the bottom line directly, but they're focused on these other things that do drive the bottom line. So I think it's important to also maybe just because I just don't want anyone to get this thought that like, oh, none of these younger generations care about making money, which unfortunately is important in an organization. It's how you pay
Yes.
salary, right? Like so like I think there's a general understanding of how these things are working. And I just think that sometimes older generations are maybe unwilling to listen or be open to the research that shows, for example, investing in your employees' mental health and having really mentally healthy and emotionally stable employees actually does support the bottom line. So I just like because I think there's someone who probably heard that and they're like, yeah, these young people, none of them care about the bottom line, and it's not
Yeah.
that, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. They do care about the bottom line, but like you mentioned, it's about creating, a work culture where employees can thrive and be productive. They're respected as the whole person. And like you mentioned, that is going to drive the bottom line.
Yeah. Okay, so how is Gen Z changing the workplace? Especially, obviously this is a millennial manager's guide to Gen Z, but how are they coming in and kind of having different expectations and changing it up?
Yeah, this is a really great question. So, I think Gen Zers, they are desiring people first work cultures. And so they are really invested in working for companies that value them as a person first and kind of an employee second. I actually remember watching a TikTok video not too long ago where someone was imitating what a job interview would be like for a Gen Z candidate. And the candidate was asking the following questions to the interviewer. Question one was, how much PTO is offered? The second was, how will my expertise be leveraged in this company? And the third question was, what's the advancement plan and how can I grow within the company? So obviously, I would certainly do some rephrasing of these questions in an actual interview, but I think this video really shed light on the needs of Gen Z. It sheds light on how this generation really values employee first cultures, work life balance, self development. They're wanting a generous PTO plan where they can take mental health days and create a sense of work-life balance. And they really want to work for a company that invests in their employees and also promotes their employees. And I think they're really bold. And I think this is something we haven't seen in previous generations. They're bold about asking for it.
Yeah.
And, I think this is really important and critical.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the biggest difference between them and previous generations isn't that we all didn't want PTO. It's just that we were so scared to ask about it. We were so
Yes.
scared, and it was definitely a mentality of get in there, work hard, be quiet, keep your head down,
Yep.
And now it's a very different generation where maybe the message has gotten to them like very loudly, or hopefully it has. It's like, if you don't ask, you don't get. And so they ask for it all. And I think the millennials, we eventually, and I know we're like, broadly kind of sticking these on these stereotypes, but like millennials, I think, did eventually start asking, but it took so much time and we were still so scared when we asked. And then it was like, if we asked and it didn't go well, I'm all just speaking from my experience. I won't say millennials, but this was my experience. If I asked and it didn't go well, it really, was like a shadow over the future times that maybe I would ask for that kind of stuff. Or even when I took PTO, I felt really guilty about it.
Hmm.
I think Gen Z just doesn't carry that. And I'm so
Right.
proud of them. Like, I feel like that's the
Yes.
thing that a lot of us can also learn from Gen Z is, just take the PTO. You've earned it. It's yours. Stop feeling like you're having open heart surgery, but you have to be able to answer the emails, or you have to be able, that's the only way you can take PTO if you're having open heart surgery, right? Versus like, no, I'm
Mhm.
just taking a day to myself. Okay, so let's talk about actually some of the stereotypes about Gen Z, because I think it's also important to think about what you've heard out there, and
Mhm.
and maybe you haven't heard these yet, but these are what people stereotypically think of with Gen Z.
Yeah, yeah, this is a really great question. So, I actually seen a clip. It was from Whoopi Goldberg, and she is on The View. It's a show in the morning, and she had made a comment about Gen Zers and millennials. And the comment was that they are not able to afford a home because they don't work hard enough.
Ah,
And I've
so not
heard
true.
this, comment several times, about Gen Zers is, they're lazy, they don't work hard enough, they don't value work. And this
All of
is,
this was said about millennials, by the way, when I was first graduating or entering the workforce too.
wow. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting.
yeah.
So obviously this is false. We're dealing with a generation that is actually far more educated, has a greater skill set, greater access to information. And I think because of that, they're realizing that they should be paid, for the knowledge and the value that they bring to the company. They believe that their resume and their reputation speaks for itself. They don't need to necessarily prove their loyalty to a company by burning themselves out. They still want to be productive at work and contribute to the bottom line. And they still want to work hard enough, but they want to be valued as people first.
Yeah, and let's just like put this stereotype to rest. It is we aren't able to afford homes, not because we don't work hard enough, but because home prices are
Yes.
outrageous and they
Yes.
have far surpassed what you are making in a salary. So,
Yes.
whoopee. If you want us
Yes.
to all have the same salary as yours, we could probably afford homes. Like, okay, what are let's talk about kind of this guide part for millennial managers. What are 5 things that millennial managers need to do in order to successfully manage and really work well with Gen Z? I mean, these are going to be the two biggest generations in the workforce pretty soon.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I had mentioned earlier that Gen Zers really value access to information. So the first thing that millennial managers need to do is foster a culture of transparency. And so here are 3 examples of that. Direct reports should know your work values. And so, as a manager, think about what you really value in the workplace. What helps drive your business decisions, and make sure that those values are shared and transparent with your direct reports. Secondly, once you set goals or a strategic plan for the organization, it's important to have one on one meetings to discuss how their work fits into these goals. So employees need to be able to make direct connections between the work that they're doing and the larger kind of organizational strategy and plan. And another example is don't hide business challenges from your team. I
Yeah.
think oftentimes as a manager, we often want to protect our team and not necessarily expose them to kind of the chaos that may exist in an organization, but be transparent about the challenges and share solutions where possible, and also consult with your employees about any ideas that they have about rectifying some of the business challenges.
Yeah, I think I think that the last one about sharing your challenges, obviously we saw a lot of that during COVID. It was like, even if you don't know, share that you don't know. I think that was one good thing that came out of COVID is I think there was just a lot more transparency in general about managers feeling like saying, I don't have all the right answers, where the kind of style of management before was that you had to know the right answer. You had to be the person who knew it all. And now I think managers are definitely leaning into a little bit more of a just like an authentic, like, I'm not perfect. I fail too. Like, I make mistakes. I don't know. I don't have all the right answers. I'd love you guys to help me figure this one out too. So that's, I think, a really positive thing that's come out of the last few years. Okay, what's the second thing millennial managers need to do in order to successfully manage and work with Gen Z?
Yes. So the second thing that millennial managers need to do is actually one of my favorite things, and it's to focus on outcomes rather than the number of hours worked. So, we're all pretty familiar with all of the return to office mandates. And I personally believe that a lot of these mandates have really hindered employee flexibility and their choice to work from anywhere. And so managers really have to think pretty creative about how to create a culture of flexibility. Um, Even when there are kind of return to office mandates. So, a few examples: a manager, may not always have control over the return to office mandates, but they may have control over individual employee schedules. So, it's important to create a schedule that is adaptable to your personnel needs and individual personal needs. So, if you have an employee that's a parent or they're a caregiver, perhaps they need a later start time. Perhaps there's someone who has a longer commute time, so maybe leaving their house a little bit later so they don't have to navigate traffic as much. Could be a way to institute a more flexible schedule. Secondly, and I think this is a little bit hard for managers, but it's important to be a role model when it comes to kind of focusing on outcomes rather than hours worked. So, taking mental health breaks, instituting wellness breaks throughout the day. And lastly, focus on the quality of the project as opposed to the number of hours an employee works. So, it's important to reiterate to your employees that it's less about the number of hours spent on a project and more about the value and the long term kind of gain of the project.
Yeah, I really like this one too, focusing on the outcomes rather than the hours worked. I also think um, I'm a huge fan of being able to work remotely. And I don't even think about it as remote work. I think about the fact that we work distributedly. Like, even if you're in an office, you're emailing with someone, you might be still talking on the phone with someone. So you're not right next to each other. I do think an office plays an important role in an organization. I just don't think it's the only place where work gets done collaboratively and where you can connect with people. And I think kind of finding, millennial managers, I think, are very good at being creative, at thinking about, okay, what does that mean and what does that look like? Are we going to have like intentional get-togethers during office hours, not like back in my day where anytime we had an intentional get-together, it was at 5 p.m. So you had to work a whole day plus do the social event, right? So they are thoughtful about that in that way, and I think that's really important. And to your point, like, somebody who's able to get a really good job done in 1 hour versus 3 hours, there shouldn't be, in a way that should be more rewarded, that they're super efficient. But I feel like the FaceTime and the proximity bias that people have had with, I want to know that you're here all hours of the night, that has got to stop. I mean, there's a reason why productivity and being busy all the time, or busyness, is a badge of honor. People were trained to have it matter the most. So it's kind of like a retraining. Okay, let's go into number three.
Yes. So the third thing that millennial managers need to do is promote a culture of autonomy and cross collaboration. So, a few examples of this. It's important to foster independent thinking to solutions. So, encourage your employees to use their own agency in solving problems. Like, I always love to consult with my employees and say, if you were going through this particular problem, how would you handle it? What resources would you need to be able to successfully manage the situation? Secondly, it's important to, really see your employees as consultants, and less of, people that necessarily like need to be managed or controlled. And so encourage them to use their own methods and experiences to solve problems. And lastly, as a manager, your role is to kind of draw connections between employees. So help connect the dots. So when appropriate, you can say to an employee, so and so is also dealing with the same problem. I think you should talk with them to really understand their issue and how you might be able to help them. So this is another way to kind of foster agency and autonomy and also promote cross collaboration between two employees who actually may be dealing with the same problem.
Yeah, no, it's really good point. Okay, what's number 4?
Yes. So the fourth thing is to really promote social responsibility in the workplace. So as I mentioned before, something that millennials and Gen Zers have in common is they really value the purpose and mission of an organization, and they're really invested in companies that have some level of social responsibility. So in a recent survey from Monster, 74% of Gen Zers ranked purpose as more important than a paycheck. So, of course, this is not saying that a paycheck is not important. They just also value purpose as well. So, it's important as a manager to really think about what gives your employees' work meaning. So, if you're working for like a product development company, it could be that this product has an impact on the lives of people. Or if you're an employee working for a nonprofit, it could be that the organization is addressing a social problem in the community. And so, really make sure that you are connecting their work to some larger kind of social problem or social responsibility. And lastly, it's important to think about how Gen Z can utilize their own professional expertise in and out of the workplace.
Yeah, this makes me think of like employee advocates or almost like employee influencers, that kind of thing that you're hearing more and more with internal communications or employer branding. It's like, okay, what employees do we have that are going on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or whatever channel it is and kind of, talking about their work. Okay, what's number 5?
Yes. And the fifth thing that millennials manager need to do in order to successfully manage their work with Gen Z is to focus on the whole person. So, this has been a common theme throughout this entire podcast. Employees are not just machines, they are people first. And so, here's a few ways that you can do that. So, if you work in an organization where there are mentoring programs, like for example, if there is a mentoring program where a younger employee gets the opportunity to be mentored by a more seasoned employee, encourage your employee to get involved in this mentoring program. A mentor is a great resource in navigating workplace challenges, but also a mentor can help with a lot of the more personal challenges that employees may be going through as well. Secondly, if you work for an organization that has a stipend or any type of money for professional development, encourage your employee to use it, and maybe suggest that they should look for a career coach like myself who can really help them in navigating workplace challenges and also preparing for advancement opportunities. And another example is there's a do to really focus on the whole person. A few things that I love: no meeting Mondays. I've worked for a few organizations that have done this, where they have given employees the opportunity to have a day where they don't schedule any meetings so they can get personal work done. They can also get more kind of admin work done, and they're not navigating around a full schedule of meetings. mental health days. And then also when it comes time for an annual review, it's important to not only set goals focused on the person's direct work, but also setting some personal or self-development goals as well.
Yeah, I love this. I agree also about the point of professional development, like giving people a budget versus being like, here's an online university and this is the only thing we offer. People just want to be able to use what works for them, whether it's one-on-one coaching, an online course. I see a lot of companies who try to like say, oh, you get access to this thing. And it's like one size fit all approach is not the way to go. Okay, so as we wrap up, I actually wanted to get some ideas for you so people who are millennial managers in a one-on-one with your direct reports. What are some good examples of questions to ask that focus on the whole person and not just the job? Because I think the one-on-ones are really important, but I think the getting some actual examples of what you could ask would be really helpful and kind of provide us that clarity of how to do it.
Yeah. So I'll share 3 examples. So I always enjoy starting off my one-on-one meetings, just kind of checking in on how they're feeling or how they're showing up today. I had a boss that used like a feeling wheel. And so if I was like struggling to think of how I was showing up, I could look at the feeling wheel and pick a word. And so that's always like a really great way to just kind of start off your one-on-one to get a sense of how they're feeling, how they're showing up, and how you can help and support them, maybe show up in a more positive way. Another question that I really love asking, and this was a question that I've just recently started doing, is what are the current drivers? So the motivators, like what is really motivating you at work right now? And what are some of the drainers? What are the distractions or the frustrations that are impacting your job right now? And how can I support you in navigating these frustrations that you're experiencing? So I think that question really shows that, this is a shared partnership when it comes to helping you maybe combat or rectify some of the distractions or frustrations that you're experiencing. And then lastly, again, because, Gen Zers are really focused on how they can be of value to a particular company or organization, I think it's important to periodically check in with your employee and, just ask the question, haven't I, what professional expertise that I haven't uncovered is beneficial to the company? That's a really important question. You may think you know your employee and everything that they bring to the company, but realistically, we don't. I think people are always discovering new things about themselves. And so it's important to just constantly check in with your employee, learn about what knowledge they bring and how they could potentially benefit the organization.
These are so good. And one other tip I really liked about the how you're feeling is I have heard the advice of saying on a scale of 1 to 10, because sometimes it's easier, when you have pain at the hospital, they're like on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it? And I think it just helps gauge or helps people gauge, but also helps them find a way to put words to emotions and feelings, which not everyone is great at. Ciera, these are really, really fantastic. And to all the millennial managers out there who are, doing their best. It is so tough to be a manager. Like I also didn't talk about that at all in this episode, but like hands down, the hardest job is managing people. And so for anybody who is doing the work, we see you, we applaud you, and we appreciate that you are invested in trying to create a really good experience. Ciera, tell people where they can find you, follow your work, work with you one-on-one. We'll also put everything in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Ciera Graham. I share career tips and I really just love engaging with other millennial managers and also millennials and Gen Zers who are looking for a career coach. And then you can also book a consultation. I do offer free consultations with all potential clients, and you can book that through my website, cieragraham.com.
Amazing. We'll put all of that in the show notes. And don't forget, Ciera's also a Career Contessa coach. So we'll link to that. And we also have other coaches on there. I think the most important thing about coaching is to work with someone who is a good fit for you. So, and Ciera is fantastic, and I think you've just proven why coaching is so valuable. But thank you so much for spending the day with us, and to all of, on behalf of millennials, I am so grateful for the work that you do. So thank you.